I'm back.
Last time you said that, you just froze to abandon the podcast.
That video's class. I'm just like I've got major chins going on because I'm just like. You're still speaking away to me for like a good minute or something.
I was just talking to myself.
It's not all that unusual, Snedds.
No, it's not.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. And you tried and failed.
We tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Scratchcast, the alternative music podcast. I'm Snedds, and as always I'm joined by my brother from another mother, Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
And we're just two Scottish loons who love to talk about music. So it's been absolutely ages since we recorded the last episode. How are you doing, Granny boy?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How you doing yourself?
Aye, good, pretty good. I'm still just like going mad on anything Sopranos at the moment. Like I've been listening to the Talking Sopranos podcast.
Ah, they were playing Glasgow.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, I don't know if that's happened yet, but I remember my brother looking into it. So I think it's the guy who plays Bobby Bacala.
Yeah.
The guy who plays Chrissy. And I've got a feeling in Glasgow they also had the guy who played Big Pussy.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's I can't remember the name of the guy who plays Bobby Bacala, but it's Michael Imperioli. Is that his name?
Yeah, I think so.
Christopher
Moltisanti.
But I've just been watching that because it's fascinating. Like because they know like so much of the behind the scenes stuff, and then they're going through it episode by episode, and then they've got like guests on. So they've had like, Anthony Jr., Meadow, and then they've had like various other behind the scenes people, like some of the writers and all that sort of stuff. I'm only on like episode 9, so I've barely even started it. But
because it's been going for quite a while now, hasn't it?
Since lockdown last year, I think.
Is it? Right, okay.
Yeah, I think it started during lockdown. So yeah, I've been watching that. I watched all the like documentary Soprano sessions. These two journalists wrote the book, The Soprano Sessions, but they did these series of documentaries, and they're just conversations. So like the first one is the two of them talking about the Sopranos and them like reporting on the Sopranos over the years, like because they basically reviewed the episodes and whatnot. And then the next one is some of the cast just sitting around having a meal.
Okay.
So it's like Johnny Sack, Furio, Big Pussy, Carlo. I can't really remember who Carlo is, but he's there. So again, that's really good because you just get insight from the actors on like what happened behind the scenes and various things and that. And then the final one's an interview between these two journalists and David Chase. So
right, okay.
So it's a lot to get through, but it's quite good.
I think I might have seen clips of that, or it must have been from another documentary. I just remember I'm trying to forget his name now. It's the barman, the guy who plays the barman from The Bing.
The guy who's always getting the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah. And
guy
he's
Tony always
basically
beats up.
He's talking about how he was almost kind of winding Jim Gandolfini up, but I think by the sounds of things they had quite a good working relationship, but the director was getting a bit annoyed because I think he obviously, losing daylight hours or whatever and just wanted to get the scene done. And then it cut to scenes of Jim Gandolfini like basically psyching himself up to get into the role. He would be like smoking cigarettes, blowing big billows of smoke all over the place. And then like, I think there's a pickup truck or something, and he just starts punching the pickup truck. Really quite strange, and making these weird noises, obviously just psyching himself up to, play an absolute brute in one of the scenes.
Yeah, like, sure, on the podcast, like, they talk about how most of the cast smoked, but Jim Gandolfini didn't smoke, but he would sometimes smoke, like you say, before like a scene or whatever to get him in the mood. And I think he'd drink like shitloads of coffee to get himself like completely amped up as well. Like sometimes if he needed to be in a certain a certain place for a scene.
Aye.
It's quite fascinating how they do it.
So obviously you went to see the Many Saints of Newark.
I did.
What were your thoughts?
I enjoyed it. It. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it.
Do you think it lived up to the hype?
No.
No.
And it's almost inevitable that it didn't live up to the hype. Yeah. But I did enjoy it. Like, I think it was good to like get some sort of insight into where Christopher comes from, because it sort of, you get an idea of, because Christopher's like he seems like quite a normal guy a lot of the time, and then he just has these bouts of like insane rage, and you kind of see that in his father throughout the film. But I don't know, it felt like it was sort of focusing partly on Dickie Moltisanti and partly on Tony, and I don't feel like it really spent enough time on either of them, and it didn't necessarily spend enough time on their relationship to make you really believe that, Dickie Moltisanti was like a father to Tony. It didn't. Yeah. I didn't. It felt like it could have been a lot longer, or potentially a series or something.
I think it would have probably worked a lot better as a mini-series, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like a 6-part series or something like that. For me, I didn't feel as if it ever really took off from the ground. It kind of felt as if it was building towards something, obviously, with the kind of African-American gangs and the Montesanti or the DeMeo family feuds. And there was a bit of that. I mean, there was a couple, well, I think there was just the one sort of gunfight out in the street. And that was kind of it.
I agree with you. It didn't really feel like it took off. It felt like it was building. It didn't even really feel like it was building to anything. It was just kind of happening.
It's kind of bitty.
Yeah, but which I didn't necessarily hate, because I kind of just enjoyed being in that world again.
Yeah.
But it would have been good if there was more. It felt like it had more of a direction than it did.
Honestly, I just remember going to see it. Obviously, I was really hyped up to go and see it, but I remember walking out of it and just being like, like, I think that's the perfect way to describe it. I was just a bit like, I was just so underwhelmed. Because, I mean, I was really hyped for it. I was watching, I didn't actually get round to watching the full of The Sopranos before I went to see the film. That's something that I had planned on doing. But I was watching a lot of clips on YouTube and what have you in preparation to go and see it, and kind of familiarising myself with the lore of The Sopranos and the background to each of the characters. But I just remember thinking, yeah, that's all right, I guess. But I'm not going to rush out to go and see it again. I suppose at the same time, though, I mean, it did make me want to see more. And I suppose there's scope for them to make more.
There is talk. I think there has been talk about a new HBO series, but
right, okay.
I don't know if that's actually been confirmed, because I think David Chase had initially said, "I'm not going to do a series."
Well, he's been adamant that that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, but I'm sure I read something recently that kind of suggested that might happen, but
he might change his mind. Yeah.
So, who knows? But, it was a bit underwhelming. But, I don't know, maybe on a
second view, you might kind of get a bit more out of it.
But yeah, definitely. I was hyped for it as well, and it just didn't really deliver. Anyway, that's enough about that. What have you been up to?
Just doing a lot of uni stuff, man. I've got an essay due in next week. So I've been doing that. So I'm doing a clinical assessment course as part of my job. So, for example, like if you're unwell and you go and see a doctor and they kind of, palpate, they percuss and palpate your chest and listen into your heart and all that type of stuff. That's what I've been learning to do. So the idea is, like, I'm not going to be trained to the point where I make diagnoses or anything like that. I'll just be trained to know what's normal and identify I suppose when things aren't normal, and then escalate to other members of the team. So quite a cool skill to have.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like, learning about all the different methods and systems and stuff like that again. Like, just wee things that are quite interesting. Like, so my mentor was saying that when you're assessing somebody, when you're doing a physical assessment on somebody, always it starts with the hands. And he was telling me about how, you get people to do this. So get the 2 index fingers together. I don't know if you'll be able to see that.
Yeah.
And there should be a little diamond in between the 2 finger bed nails.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called Shimmeroth's window. And basically, if you don't have that, they'll probably have like clubbing in the fingernails, which can be indicative of underlying illnesses, depending on what the actual fingernail bed looks like and how badly clubbed it is and what have you. So things like that I just find really quite interesting, quite quirky, if you know what I mean.
Aye, that's quite interesting.
Aye.
Yeah, I suppose it's weird things like that just come with experience, don't they?
Aye, absolutely. Like, see when I'm like percussing all the organs, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Like, you're expecting it to sound like you're wanting to hear like resonance, obviously, over the lungs and what have you. You shouldn't have a dull sound when you're percussing the lungs, because if you do, then that suggests that there's like maybe a build up of fluid or something like that in there. It should be kind of resonant, so they kind of talk about it being you should hear a kind of timpani kind of noise, almost like a kind of hollow drum. It's quite tough, it's quite tough to familiarise yourself with that. And again, like you said, it just comes with experience, man.
So you're like tapping all these organs and like reviewing.
Yep, that sounds good. That sounds alright.
Oh yeah, I like the melody that's creating.
Actually, just like drumming at a beat on their fucking liver or something. What about yourself, man? Apart from
taking in as much stuff about the Sopranos as possible, I went to Hidden Door.
Yeah?
That was fucking ages ago now. It was like September.
And this is now the 21st of November.
Yeah. So I can't remember the date it was in September. It was like the middle of September. I went to Hidden Door, which was at like Granton Gasworks, which
it looked really good, man.
Yeah, it was in like it was like a industrial estate, and there was this old sort of structure from the gasworks like looming over everything. It was really cool. It was like a 2 stage setup, so there was always there was something on at one stage while they got the other stage set up, and then it would just swap over, so you could basically see everything that was on if you wanted to. And they had like sort of art stuff. There was another site across the road, and they had like, I think it was like the Leith School of Art, and they had their when their end of year show or whatever. So there's some really cool stuff there, like weird modern art. But yeah, it was good. I think it was Wednesday to Sunday, but I just went to Saturday and Sunday. So there was shitloads of stuff on. I mainly went to see Geffergeist and Postcode Prom Queen. I think Postcode Prom Queen were on the Saturday early evening, and they had this kind of thing. It was supposed to be like the countdown to the end of the world or something.
Okay.
So they had like a countdown in the background, and it felt like they were sort of on stage going, oh well, it was very normal. Like it didn't
We've
feel
had a good
like
run.
It didn't really feel like that dramatic. It was just like, oh yeah, there's the countdown to the end of the world's happening in the background, and it's all very normal. But it was cool. They played. Well, they played a lot of stuff from Music for Hypercapitalists.
Yes,
and they had guests. They had Empress. They had Miles Better. They had Jackal Trades, who came on and was like, "It's megaphone season." And he's going mental. And Dragon's Jaw with Conscious Root. That was probably the highlight. It was absolutely amazing.
That's a video you sent me. I was quite jealous.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. Like I took quite a few. I've got a few videos of Postcode Prom Queen and Geffergeist as well. So I think the first band I saw they were called Future Get Down, and they were like they were a bit like Never Not Nothing. They were like wearing jumpsuits, and like it was like heavy, sort of electronics and bass. They were quite cool, and there were quite a few other. It was a handful of other acts that I saw. And but Geffergeist on the Sunday, like early afternoon, they were good as well. Played Graceless, they played Parasites, They also played the new track Orbit, which featured Conscious Root as well, which is it's like over 7 minutes, and a good 4 minutes of it is, I think, Fiona Liddell, violin. There was another singer who, unfortunately, I don't know her name, but I think she was playing violin as well and doing sort of like harmonies and stuff. So there's a good 4 minutes of that sort of stuff, which is really cool. And then Conscious Root comes in for the last 3 minutes, and it's a really good track, really, really impressive. And they had Jack Hinks on guitar as well, which was cool to see him. So yeah, really good. Look forward to Hidden Door 2022.
And you were at Stag and Dagger.
Aye, fucking hell. So Stag and Dagger was just it was 2 weeks ago, I think. And that was a bit different. That was in the city centre. That was in the Cowgate in Edinburgh. And that was just a few venues all around the Cowgate. So it was Sneaky Pete's, the Mash House, Legends, which is the old Opium nightclub. It's just changed to Legends, which is I think it's a metal and rock sort of club, which is quite cool. But
all right, okay.
And there was a couple other ones which I can't remember the names of because I didn't go to those ones. I only went to a handful of them, but I saw some cool bands. A band called Lily and a band called Dictator at Sneaky Pete's. I think Dictator, a band that Robert Carlyle had tipped for greatness. He does this Saturday playlist or something on Twitter where he gets people to send him recommendations for songs. And I think I think it was Dictator, and he'd kind of tipped them for greatness, but they were all right. They were good. The singer was it was all about the singer. For the most part, the singer was really, really impressive.
All right, okay.
And they did certain songs where he was singing, full on singing, really going for it. And then they had certain tracks where he was doing more of a sort of speak singing, almost rap kind of thing. And those were the songs that I preferred, so I wasn't too taken by their other stuff, but certainly when they did a more kind of almost hip hop kind of thing, I think they were better, so they were good. So Cheap Teeth and the Lime Society and Cameo Habitat at the Mash House, they were all sort of post-rocky kind of bands, sort of. Cheap Teeth probably the best of the bunch, I think. In fact, Cheap Teeth, by the time they finished, they got on their last song, everybody went absolutely mad for them. They got a standing ovation. I know everyone was standing. Everyone was standing anyway, but they basically got a standing ovation at the end. It was really good. They were a mixture of the Stooges and David Bowie, and there was bits of Ramones in there. They had the singer had a sort of almost Transylvanian tinge to his vocals. So it was Transylvanian noise rock mixed with classic rock. Yeah, they were good. I took a thing from their Spotify, I think it was. It says that Steve Lamacq described them as Nick Cave doing the conga, which is an interesting way to describe them. And the last band that I saw was Me Rex, and that was in Legends in a sort of almost an attic stage. It was quite small. And the crowd was a bit underwhelming. There was only about 20 people, something like that. But the band were very good. They played a few songs that I wasn't familiar with, and they were quite a bit rockier than the stuff from Mega Bear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a full band, drums, bass, guitar, sort of keyboards. But yeah, really good. And they played a good sort of medley of songs from Mega Bear, sort of in the middle of the set. I can't tell you how many songs from it they played because they all just kind of rolled into one. But yeah, they were excellent.
I've been listening to Mega Bear quite a lot. Obviously said in the last podcast that I bought their album.
Yeah. Which
came with a specially curated kind of playlist, and I think we were both how's that going to work on vinyl? But it's the CD or version that you get on streaming platforms like Spotify is very different. You know what I mean? The vinyl is the created playlist. You know,
it's linear, yeah.
Yeah, and it works good, but it's. I mean, I suppose it does what it says on the tin, because it does feel like a very different album, and obviously that was their plan. You know what I mean? To play each of the 52 tracks, whatever, on shuffle with the idea that you can get an infinite combination of songs and playlists, and it's really quite enjoyable, man. Really like it.
I saw a thing on Twitter earlier. Someone was like, "Oh, me Rex have been fucked over by Adele," because if you saw the news that Adele had gone to Spotify and said, like, turn off the shuffle function on albums, because you know that's not the way an artist wants you to listen to their album. They want you to listen to it from track one in that order. It's, you know, a piece of work that's been curated, which, you know, I agree with in general. It often is.
Yeah, I mean,
but why remove people's choice to just play an album on shuffle if they want to?
I was showing my workmate photos of Adele earlier on because I hadn't recognised her. I hadn't recognised how much, you know, she's obviously lost a lot of weight recently. And his response was that she looked like a man in drag. I was like,
it's harsh.
Harsh, man. That's cutting. That's cutting.
Just before we started recording this,
that's my contribution.
She's on the TV just now doing an evening with, and it's just Adele performing in front of like stars, you know, actors.
I think I saw that advertised.
It's just like the most like privileged crowd in Britain.
Stormzy's at it. I saw that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But Stormzy actually sings about Adele on one of his songs. I can't remember which one it is, but the lyric is like, I can't remember what the lyric is, but it's is it too big for your boots or something?
I don't know. I don't think I could.
But you still listen to Adele or something like that. Like, I think the basic premise is you're acting all hard, but I know that you sing to Adele or something. You know, or he's not too hard, or he's, I don't know. So it's something along those lines. Anyway.
Yeah. Fair enough. Before we move on, you went to see Kneecap.
Yes, I did.
Like about 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was about 20 years ago. But it was at the Garage on Socker Hill Street in Glasgow, and they were phenomenal. The one beside the ABC, O2 ABC.
Isn't there two though? Is there not like an upstairs and a downstairs, or like a?
Oh, it was upstairs.
The attic.
It was upstairs.
The attic or something. Anyway, doesn't matter.
They were amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing, man. The crowd were absolutely lit. Everybody was bouncing away. Yeah, it was just amazing from start to finish. A really good crowd as well. They ended with HOOD, and the crowd went absolutely wild. So that's what they did for their encore, and the crowd went absolutely wild, man. I'd love to go and see them again, and we are going to see them again. They're playing Glasgow in February.
Did you get a ticket for that?
We've all got tickets, man.
Have we?
Yes. This is your lucky day. You've got a ticket.
Oh, good man.
Me, you, and Boff.
Nice. That sounds amazing.
I can't remember. I've got a feeling they're playing the Badlands, which would be amazing. I can't think of a better venue for a band like that to play. Obviously, because, you know, they do play up to the whole Irish Republican thing. So, obviously, being quite close to Celtic Park and that'll go down an absolute treat.
Yeah, I suppose it would, yeah.
Yeah, but no, they were absolutely amazing, man. Really good. And I am going to see Madness on the 3rd of December.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. I was speaking to Boff again just the other day, and he's like, it won't be too long till we'll be going like this. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Are we meant to be going hill walking? Are we going to go for a walk or something? And he's like, no, we're going to see Madness, man. And I was like, didn't know I was going to see them. But I've got a ticket for that as well.
Nice. I'm going to see Pete and Diesel.
Ah, right, okay. They played Aberdeen, like, just a couple of days ago, I think.
Yeah, they did. I think they played Edinburgh, like, the other week as well, but I think I've got tickets for the Ironworks or something in Inverness.
Up in Inversnecky.
Yeah, next. I can't even remember when it is, like, in January, February, April, March, I don't know. What early next year, anyway, whenever it is. The first quarter of next year, I think. Should probably know.
I've got the Cribs in March. I'm going to see the Cribs in March. Which, it's one of those things, you just forget about all these gigs and that you booked, like, during COVID, like, during the lockdown, and they get rescheduled, and you just kind of almost lose track of it.
Yeah, well, I almost forgot about Stag and Dagger. It's like, because it had been postponed for, like, I don't know, like probably 18 months or something.
The Hella Mega Tour, the Weezer, Fall Out Boy and Green Day gig, that's been rescheduled for 2022, but that was originally meant to go ahead in 2020.
Is that to give them time to write some better songs?
I'm not going anymore. No, everybody's pulled out. Everybody's pulled out, man. So,
good.
Yeah, I don't think I'd go to a gig like that myself. Like, it's just too big.
Like, just standing in an arena, like, on your own, yeah, it'd be a bit lonely.
Yeah, I think it's at Bellahouston Park, where it was originally. I don't know where they're having it now. I won't be going. I got my money back.
It's for the best.
It's for the best.
Oh no, if they play the classic songs, I'm sure it would be a good time.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. Can't imagine you'd go along to see Green Day and not see Basket Case or Welcome to Paradise or
and in Scotland,
Minority.
You've run the risk of getting bottled off a stage with bottles full of piss. So you play the crowd pleasers, don't you?
Yeah. They played a gig. Was it Woodstock? There was another big festival at Woodstock in the early 90s. I want to say it was like 96, 97, something like that. And people were throwing mud at them. Like big clumps of mud. They were absolutely covered. And I think Billy Joel was just riling up the crowd. I mean, if you search YouTube, you'll be able to find it quite easily.
I think that was
kind of notorious.
Yeah, notorious for being like really poorly organised, and like the crowds just like rioted. Like,
aye.
Okay, well maybe we should get on with the rest of the show then, should we? So what have we got for you on this month's show? So this would be a special episode to celebrate 2 years of the podcast, which I think rolled around on September 15th, so we're kind of miles behind on that.
It's our party, and we'll be late if we want to.
Well, there you go, yeah. Exactly. So this is episode 19, but if you count the interviews we've done, there's 5 of them, so that makes 24 episodes. So that's like almost one a month. I think we're a little bit behind that now, but it's almost one a month in 2 years, so it's not too bad.
Averages out, yeah.
So to celebrate that illustrious milestone, in this episode we'll be reviewing the latest albums from Adele, Ed Sheeran, Coldplay and ABBA. Obviously that was just a wee joke, Grant. I was waiting for you to say something like, I've listened to those albums for nothing.
I don't have them in my notes at all.
No, me neither.
It's fairly Bulgarian heavy, actually. This
it's quite Bulgarian heavy, yeah. And what we're actually doing is all of our albums this time are submissions. So this is stuff that we've had sent in from way back, from the start of the podcast through to just a few months ago. So we've got some cool stuff. We've also got our singles swap from the last time. So we'll be discussing Paranoia Party by Boston's Francis Forever and Violet by Northeast of Scotland indie rockers, the Zebecks or the Zbex. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce that.
Don't know.
But the submissions we've got are psych prog metal from Bulgaria with TDK's Usbe, post-metal doomgaze from Richmond, Virginia with Breaths Lined in Silver, psych stoner prog rock, also from Bulgaria, with Muddy's Golden Orb, moody electronic pop from Huddersfield with Equal Frequencies, Karma, and finally ambient experimental psychedelia from Spain with Sugar Pan's EP, You'll Own Nothing and You'll Be Happy. So, unless there's anything else, we'll just move on to the single swap then. As always, on every episode, we each give the other a song to listen to for a discussion on the next podcast. And as I said before, I gave Grant Violet by the Zbex, and Grant gave me Paranoia Party by Francis Forever. Do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So Snedds just said there, he gave me the Zbex Violet that was released earlier on this year on the 25th of July. It's approximately 4 minutes and 29 seconds long, so just under 5 minutes. Certainly doesn't feel like a long track, doesn't overstay its welcome by any stretch of the imagination. The Zbex are a 4-piece indie band from Elgin in God's own county of Moray, Scotland. Believe it or not, that's where we both come from. And they actually played Nice and Sleazy's on Thursday in Glasgow, up in Sauchiehall Street, across from the garage that we were kind of mentioning earlier on when we were talking about Kneecap. So with regards to this song, I mean, I've described it as an immediately engaging, bright and shiny summery track, which kind of really instantly put me in mind of the heyday of indie guitar bands from the early 90s and 90s. Likes of the Cooks, the Libertines, Razorlight, that type of thing. I think you also kind of likened them a wee bit to Cheekface, and I can kind of see the similarities in a way. The lead singer kind of sings at first, but there is a bit of a kind of lilt, there is a bit of a kind of Tim Burty's kind of vocal delivery, and he certainly kind of ramps it up a gear when it comes to the chorus, which I really enjoyed, and I've described it as something that you can kind of really kind of bob your head along to. As for the lyrics themselves, I think they kind of depict a fairly messy breakup, or rather the lead vocalist's perhaps reluctancy to kind of split up with the song's namesake, Violet, specifically saying that he's got all her colours stuck in his head. But it sounds as if he's maybe a bit torn, almost as if she maybe kind of leads him astray a bit. I think later on in the song he kind of talks about being down at a play park, I think maybe walking home and having to tell a lie to his mum as to where he's been. So yeah, and then kind of later describes her as being violent Violet. As for the musicianship, like I said, it's pretty straightforward, kind of indie guitar rock. But yeah, I thought it was a really good track, man. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man, me too. I mean, they're a young band. They're like 18, 19, I think, most of them.
And they've released a couple of tracks, haven't they?
There's a demo EP called Out of the Dust that Violet features on. So yeah, there's 4 tracks on that, something like that. But yeah, I kind of first came across them in it was like an article in the Northern Scot, on their website.
Really?
It was doing the rounds on the sort of local news, so they were featured in that, and that's kind of how I came across them. The Northern Scot being the sort of local newspaper in Elgin and Murray. But so yeah, they seem to be getting like a fairly big push from the local community, which is good. And I mean, I think I don't think that's unwarranted, because I think this is despite being referred to as a demo, I think this sounds great for the most part. It's a pretty good song. I think you're likening them to sort of early indie bands or the sort of 2000s sort of era is fairly accurate. I'd gone as far as even saying it was reminiscent of like classic bands like Television, that sort of 70s rock and roll. I think mostly in the sort of guitars, but with more of a modern twist. I was thinking something like The View. Maybe, The View, saying they're modern now is probably stretching it a bit. It's like 2 decades ago, but but you know what I mean. Like that's kind of what it reminded me of at times. Cheekface in those sort of slacker vocals. Occasionally, and like you say, like the Libertines, and maybe not so much on this song, but some of the other songs on there's a song, one of the other songs in the EP just really sounds like the Libertines at times. But yeah, so good drums, a lot of subtle little bass slides and rumbles. The only bit that I wasn't too keen on was there's a sort of whoa kind of vocal bit, which is, I don't know if it's the pre-chorus or the chorus itself, but it just felt a bit jarring. I did kind of get used to it after a while, but every time it comes in that first time, it just feels a bit jarring. There's a bit of a stomp behind it, but that's probably my main criticism of the song. But yeah, I can't really find too many faults in it. It's a good sort of indie rock and roll track, isn't it?
Definitely, man. I mean, it's a pretty good single. I kind of give it a 7 out of 10.
I've given it an 8. Yeah, despite my criticism of some of the vocals, I think it's just a kind of fun, catchy rock song. And the EP's decent as well. There's elements of like the Smiths, the Cure, the Pixies, even Oasis at times.
I felt as if this song, it did kind of, it certainly had a kind of Britpop vibe to it.
Yeah, I think there's some good songs on that EP, and I think they could go on to write some really, really great songs. So yeah, enjoyed that. Cool. So that was Violet by the Zebecks. Are we calling them the Zebecks?
Yeah. Zebecks.
Or the Zebecks? I don't know.
Zebecks. Who knows?
Someone write in and tell us.
Someone clarify that for us.
Send us a sound bite. Okay, so yeah, that was Violet by the Zebecks.
She said, you gotta wake up. I said, you gotta look back. And oh, whoa, whoa, I'm not in the mood for your sick jokes. She said, we gotta break up, babe, I don't want that. Violent, violet. Violent, violet.
Okay, so you gave me then Paranoia Party by Francis Forever, which came out on the 2nd of June on Mom and Pop Records. Paranoia Party is the second single from Boston singer-songwriter Francis Garrett's EP of the same name. The EP also features the smash hit Space Girl, which went viral on TikTok, and, well, TikTok right now seems to be the sort of hottest place for music to get discovered these days. Although I do feel that the exposure could potentially be a bit short-lived given the sort of endlessly scrolling, like, channel flicking nature of the platform. But it seems to be where music breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm going to go off topic here, but certainly like the Bo Burnham soundtrack to Inside, I mean, that exploded on TikTok.
Yeah.
To the point where like people were, using that song to make their own TikToks and no idea that it was related to him.
Well, I'd heard it on TikTok. I mean, I don't have TikTok, but my partner was scrolling through TikTok and that song came on. And I didn't realise it was Bo Burnham.
Yeah.
At all. So, but it was on loads of videos. So anyway, before this, I hadn't listened to Francis Forever. And I think you did recommend them to me a good while back. I just didn't get a chance to give their music any proper attention. But I wish I had paid more attention because Paranoia Party is outstanding. And so too, in fact, is Space Girl. Which,
yeah, that's right.
And I just keep mentioning it because it tends to play straight after Paranoia Party on Spotify. So the song itself opens with these kind of tender ukulele chords combined with a thumping electronic drum beat and restrained spoken word vocals, quite similar to other artists we've talked to, like maybe like Arlo Parks or Girl in Red at times. And it's a pretty laid back affair for the most part. The main melody and hook comes from vocals through the verses, and it's just really catchy, but at the same time it's really morose.
Mm-hmm.
And the lyrics kind of discuss old relationships, anxieties, good times and bad times. Some of the lyrics are particularly great. Like, there's a line that goes, lo-fi drum beat slowing down my heartbeat, my brain's in pieces all over the floor. What I love about that is it literally describes the drum beat of the song, which I found quite cool. Other standout lines are this couch smells of lovin' and dying and Bud Light, and will you just ease my pain, will you just call me insane, pouring my wine down the drain, promise that I'm okay. I just think the lyrics are really vivid and descriptive and poetic, which just kind of pulls you into the song. And there's a good climax to the song. It starts to build from roughly the halfway point, and everything kind of strips back initially to just Francis's vocals. And then it's got these like percussive chimes, and then slowly the drums come back and they build to this big crescendo with the like fuzzed up bass and distorted vocals, and just everything becomes really heavy, actually. Like, everything becomes distorted, including the vocals. And then it comes full circle back to the sort of gentle, soft vocals and ukulele from the opening bars of the song. Yeah, it's excellent. Like, I can't really fault this song. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I love Francis Forever. I think it's really good. It was released like ahead of the release of EP of the same name on the 9th of July, which contains 6 songs. Space Girl's on there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty enjoyable and easy listen. It has that real kind of lo-fi bedroom pop rock. I want to describe it as twee pop or twee rock as well. And I mean, I don't mean that. Obviously, twee has kind of connotations of it being somehow bad. It's not at all. And even when I kind of talk about it being kind of like that bedroom pop rock feel, or having that kind of bedroom pop rock feel to it, I'm not trying to suggest it sounds amateurish or unprofessional. I mean, you kind of likened it to Girl in Red there. And in many ways, this EP reminded me of Chapter 2.
Yes.
The Girl in Red EP. And I think that's kind of part of its charm. That's kind of part of its allure. I think that's why I quite like it. However, there are occasions where it really takes off, and there's some really impressive guitar sections in there, like soaring solos and stuff that are really quite interesting and delight to listen to, particularly in the likes of My Condolences to Myself, which I think might be kind of track 3 or 4 on the EP.
Yeah, that's got like a proper like 80s guitar solo in it, doesn't it?
Aye. Just recently released a single as well entitled Certified Fool. That was on the 3rd of November. It's worth checking out too.
Yeah. I had a listen to the EP, and I really enjoyed it as well. Like you said, the sort of guitar solos on My Condolences to Myself, the song Eat the Rich, it sounded a bit like a Mouldy Peaches sort of idea, but then the lyrics
that's in keeping with that kind of twee pop rock feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's got the amazing line, "Go suck a dick and get off your high horse," which I thought was particularly good. Weirdly, the beat on that song reminded me of My Lovely Horse from Father Ted. If you remember that song, where they try to win the Eurovision Song Contest. Yeah. And there's just a similar kind of, I was going to say gallop there, but it's not. That's just the horse analogy. But it's not a gallop. But it's a trot. It's got a similar kind of
canter.
Yeah, maybe a canter. Maybe that's
horses canter.
Yeah, absolutely. So the EP is really good as well. I like there's a good sense of humour there too. So I gave this a 9.
I think that's fair to say, man. That's what I've given it as well.
Yeah, superb stuff. Okay, so that was Paranoia Party by Francis Forever.
Lo-fi drum beats, slowing down my heartbeat. My brain's in pieces all over the floor. And this couch smells of loving and dying and Bud Light. Stripped me of my spine, my body clearly isn't mine. Will you just ease my pain? Will you just call me insane?
Okay, what have you got for me for the next episode then?
I have got you Pip Blom. I Know I'm Not Easy to Like. So this is a band that I've been kind of following for a wee while now. This single was released on the 9th of November 2021, obviously, on Heavenly Records or /PIAS. It's approximately 3 minutes and 34 seconds long. It's the latest single from the band's 3rd album to date, entitled Welcome Break, which was released last Friday. I haven't had a chance to completely absorb the album. I've kind of been dipping in and out, but it's a band that I've kind of been following for a wee while, like I said. They are themselves an indie 4-piece band from Amsterdam. I suppose this song feels like a bit of a mashup between the kind of churning, chugging kind of musicianships of the likes of, say, Dry Cleaning.
Okay.
With a good dollop of kind of the energy, the likes of kind of Amyl and the Sniffers, but maybe not as kind of upfront and aggressive as Amyl and the Sniffers. But yeah, definitely one worth checking out, I would say.
I think you recommended Pip Blom to me before, and I think I had one of their songs in one of the playlists a good while ago, like one of their earlier singles, but I can't remember which one, but I remember quite liking. So I've got something completely different, and this is Working All the Time by Xenia Rubinos. And that's Xenia or Zanaya, so it's with an X. So it's Xenia, Rubinos, Rubinos. So I'm not going to tell you too much about this, but she is of Puerto Rican and Cuban heritage.
Okay.
And she creates a bewildering mixture of urban, jazz, R&B, Latino, and hip-hop with air horns. Probably a whole bunch more. So it's absolutely bonkers, is what I'm trying to say. So that's, I've got that for you to listen to. In fact, her album, which I haven't written the name of it down here, but her album is equally as diverse. Yeah, so it's Working All the Time by Xenia Rubinos.
Okay.
Right, let's just move on to the album reviews then. So normally we would now move on to Submission Corner, but as we've said before, these are all submissions and they begin all the way from when we first started the podcast, before this feature was even a thing. So before we get to those reviews, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who has sent us our music in the past. We've had an extremely broad and interesting range of albums and songs to talk about, and yeah, we've been able to listen to a ton of stuff that we normally wouldn't have known about. So that's good. So if you're out there and you're listening and have something you'd like us to hear, then you can send it over to us at theheadscratcher@outlook.com or direct message us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. So the first album we've got is the album Uspe from TDK, which came out on 23rd of December 2019 on Made of Stone Recordings. So this album is quite old in that kind of sense, that it came out, a few years ago. It's by no means old. I mean, that's ridiculous. But in terms of what we normally talk about, it's reasonably old. TDK is a band from the separatist Republic of Dobrina, formed between the teeth of a martyr. I take that straight from their Spotify bio. I just like the drama and the sort of fantasy and intrigue that you get from that, just like tiny hint of backstory. It's just quite interesting.
So I kind of looked into that, and I don't know if that was like a tongue-in-cheek type of thing. You know how like we talk about like New Mill, like the sprawling metropolis of New Mill, for example, which is a tiny wee place just outside Keith, our hometown. Because when I looked into where Dobrina was, it's a village. It's a small place, which is located in the northeast of Bulgaria.
Yeah, I just figured.
You figured it was a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing.
Yeah, that's kind of.
I think it maybe partly is, but like on their Bandcamp page, they describe themselves as Bulgaria's disappointment. And they describe, like, according to their Spotify page or Spotify bio, like you just said, they describe their sound as a cross section of the social experiment in Bulgaria, which they call the transition, which sounds quite ominous yet alluring. It makes you want to find out a bit more. So I did a bit of delving.
Okay.
Obviously, they're Bulgarian. They sing in Bulgarian. And I don't speak Bulgarian, so I don't know what they're singing about throughout the course of the album. But from what I read online, it's regarding Bulgaria's transition from a post-socialist regime to a pro-Western capitalist-like economy.
Right. Okay.
They sing exclusively in Bulgarian, like I said, and apparently their lyrical content is purportedly heavily influenced by the late new wave poet, I'm going to mispronounce this, Dimitriar Voveth, who was the lead singer of a cult new wave band called Nova Generacija. He sadly passed away at the untimely age of 27 years of age, so really quite young. Couldn't find a whole lot about him online other than kind of photographs and small bits of information here and there. Apparently his band opened up for Depeche Mode after his death in 2006, with his brother Simon standing in for him on vocals. So they must have been quite a big hit, I listened to a few of their tracks online, on YouTube mostly, and they're pretty dark and pretty eerie sounding, quite ominous, and there's a lot of elements of that in this album, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I had initially likened it to, and the name of the band that I initially likened to is completely gone out of my head. To Give Up to Failure.
Yeah, well, in fact, I would say that most of the albums that we are covering are quite similar to Giving Up to Failure's first album, in that I think they are albums that almost need to be experienced. That the album is an experience. I suppose it kind of cuts back to what you're saying about Adele.
Proving Adele right, yeah.
You've proven Adele right once again. Once again, she's been proven right. They have to be kind of. I think they do have to be experienced as a whole. I can't think of any song on any of these albums that we're covering this time round that I'd pick out and listen to independently of the album, or independent of the album rather.
I think maybe the only one I would do that with would be
Karma.
Yeah, Equal Frequencies. I think,
Yeah,
but I get your point. I've basically written down the submission email here.
Oh,
so
right. Okay.
I'm going to just read it out. What they sent us. We might be kind of going over old ground again here a wee bit, but so this is what they said to us, and this was actually, they were sending us the single Royak 102.9, which is the track that opens the album, and they kind of just mentioned the album at the same time. So I present to you Royak 102.9 from our new album Uspe. The album is diverse in the intensity of its tracks, so if you have time, I'd recommend checking out Tetrud, Maladost and Dom as well. And in brackets it says, some of them are long. Sorry! Exclamation mark.
Oh.
Some of them are very long.
Yeah.
The album Uspa, meaning success, progress, was recorded in 12 days in September 2019 in an abandoned theatre in a desolate village in Bulgaria by Jesse Gander, famous for his work with Brutus, Comeback Kid and Japan Droids, who also mixed it. The mastering was done by Alan Douche. Be careful not to call him Alan Douche. But he's apparently a Grammy winner who's worked with a ton of big names in rock and metal. I should have checked to see if I could find any of those big names, but I haven't. So we'll just take your word for it there. And the band TDK hails from Plovdiv, Bulgaria, and finds influence in many things, but mainly post-rock and metal, stoner, jazz, psychedelia, folk music, and general disappointments in life. So that's what they sent us. I have to say, like, when I first read the band name TDK, it just kind of immediately made me think of like old VHS tapes and like old audio cassette tapes and stuff from when I was a kid. Like they've got that kind of branding, the TDK branding.
Yeah, it's funny because this is their second album?
Oh, I don't know, actually.
I think it is. Yeah, it's the band's second album, so they've released an eponymous, self-titled debut album. Have to get those words in there, Snedds. Have to get those words in there. That was released on the 19th of February 2017, so quite a while ago as well. Yeah, and it's funny you say that. It reminds you of the kind of VHS kind of branding, because if you look at the cover photo or cover picture for that album, it does have that kind of feel to it. It does seem quite old-fashioned in a way. The kind of TDK is stretched, and it's like bubble in big orange bubble writing, and it almost looks as if it's kind of stretched over the front cover of the album.
Cool. Okay. It's just I just kind of just brought back fond memories of watching like shitty recordings off the TV of like Ghostbusters 2 and Starship Troopers. Those are the ones that I had. Two of my favourites that I had recorded back in the day. Anyway, the album's 47 minutes long, but it's only 6 tracks, which you might be wondering how that's possible, but it's because some of the songs are incredibly long.
Well, is the last track 12 minutes long?
So two of them,
the shortest is 4 minutes, or just over 4 minutes.
Yeah, so 2 of the tracks are about 12 minutes long, the opener and the closer. So Royak 102.9 and Tetrud, they're 12 minutes, and then another 2 are like 6 and 7 minutes long. So yeah, it's a pretty long album. I mean, the songs, they're in the sort of tradition of prog, they're like long songs that kind of build and surge, and they've got these like gloomy atmospheric passages that culminate in these some really, really heavy moments. soaked in passion, blood, sweat and tears, I feel like. And at times it's absolutely terrifying. And other times it's really tender and introspective, but it's like, even with like such crazy song lengths, I think it's always really quite engaging.
Yeah, well, I've kind of described it, quite similarly to yourself. I've kind of described it as most of the tracks feeling like intense, sprawling, ambient soundscapes. They really kind of draw you in and kind of hold you in their gaze almost, has you kind of enthralled in terms of the musicianship in and of itself. It was quite complex, like you said. There's a lot of depth, texture. The song themselves kind of range from kind of languid, kind of stoner rock-esque riffs to punishing, bubbling kind of frenzy of stabbing and unwieldy electrical guitars, explosive drums, crashing cymbals. I think it's important to note with vocals to match at times. Like the lead vocalist, ranges from screaming, growling to almost whimpering, pleading at times. And it's, as you said, quite introspective, quite evocative. A lot of it feels as if it would work quite well as a soundtrack. Yeah, it's one to be experienced, I think.
Yeah, it's got these like sort of like a cold, sort of war-torn soundscape that it creates, and that's kind of why I likened it to Give Up to Failure, because that their record Burden had a very certain kind of atmosphere to it, quite a bleak one.
Mm-hmm.
This has the same sort of mood to it, but it's got these like ragged, distorted guitars, and it's got like these sort of technical, like mathy sort of bass lines, which reminiscent of like the sort of thing that Tool would do. And it's it can be really spacey and psychedelic and meditative, but also like thunderingly heavy as well. I think the opener, Royak 102.9, does that really well. It opens with a sort of pacey mechanical guitar lick, a grinding bass line, and these gruff Eastern European vocal twads. But over the course of 12 minutes, it sort of layers various levels of noise and reverb, and I've likened them again to something like La Bestia de Gavaudan.
I think that's fair to say.
And it gets super heavy and weird. There's like spoken word vocals, doomy riffs, and sort of urgent crashing drums. So, and the shortest song on the album is 4 minutes, as you said. It feels a bit punkier. It's got a kind of spiraling opening riff, like a bit of a bounce to the bass. It's got this really urgent, soaring chorus. There's some melodic guitar picking in there, some awkward spiky picking as well. And there's a bit where the main riff of that goes like, it sounds like the theme tune for Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's like really sort of like a sort of haunted, a sort of ghost story sound, which I really enjoyed. There's a lot of cool stuff on this album.
I really like the third song. I'll try and pronounce it. Ni Gavorum Seratasete. I've definitely pronounced that wrong. But I liked how you kind of mentioned it sounded almost kind of like a war-torn soundtrack or what have you.
Yeah. They
actually repeat the title of that track in unison over and over, and it kind of reminded me of that proper kind of Soviet Russian USSR type of propaganda type song. And I was interested to find out what that actually meant, so I typed it into Google Translate. Obviously I'm not too sure how correct it was, but apparently it translated as "we talk with our hands," which sounded pretty badass, like we fucking sort things out with our fists. Talk to the hand,
It almost sounds as well like you talk with, you like use hand signals instead of like talking out loud, because you could be being monitored. I guess that just kind of came in my head just now. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, that sort of chant is really cool. And there's a really good bit in the middle of the song where it's just all riffs and weird electronics, and it's pretty cool. One thing I noticed is that, and I don't know if this is on purpose, is that after that first 12-minute track, it drops down to 4 minutes on the next track, and then it rises to 5 minutes, and then the next track rises to 6 minutes, and then the next track goes to almost 8 minutes, and then finally it's 12 minutes again. And it's almost like the whole album builds and swells and crashes, even like the track lengths, which might not have been deliberate, but it's a nice coincidence if it wasn't. And it's just the way the songs are sort of built with these weird peaks and troughs, and the actual track lengths of the album do the same thing, which I just thought was an interesting thing that I noticed.
Yeah, to be honest, I never noticed that, but it'd be pretty cool if it was deliberate, or it has been deliberate.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I mean, the last track is pretty unbelievable. Like, just the bass tone on that song is just so good, and there's a kind of like buzz to it that you can imagine that would make your teeth rattle, like if you were at the speaker with that bass playing. And it's just got these really interesting guitar licks and just a great groove to it. And one of their heaviest moments, about halfway through, one of the heaviest moments from the whole album is there, just these pulverizing drums, and the vocals. I've said the vocals will tear the flesh from your bones. So it's just how harsh the screams are, and it's all really, really impressive.
It's one that certainly grew on me over time. I don't think I gave it my full attention the first time I listened to it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and I mean it's a long listen, and I suppose even an album that opens with a 12-minute track is never going to be the most accessible, especially given how heavy it is at times.
I still really enjoyed it, man. You know what I mean? But again, I find that we're kind of talking quite a lot about Give Up to Failure, but it's very similar. It had a very similar vibe for me. And yeah, I think it is an album that you would have to experience, really. Yeah.
I'd quite happily listen to most of these tracks on their own, to be fair, as well. But I think, it's definitely an experience to listen to from start to finish. But I'd happily just pick out any of these and listen to them as well. How did you score this one?
I've given it a strong 8.
Strong 8. Yeah, I've given it a 9, so I don't think we're too far apart there. I think, just the more I listen to it, the more I enjoy it. And I just love that quiet. I love the loud, quiet, loud dynamic in general. But I really love in metal where you get that to an even more extreme, where you get like the loud, quiet, loud, but it's loud, quiet, heavy as fuck. Like I love that. I love that dynamic. It's so good. But yeah, okay. So that was Uspe by TDK. Cool. Cool. What are we on to next? I think it is Lined in Silver by Breaths.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to start off with this?
Aye, go for it.
So Breaths, Lined in Silver. This was released on the 26th of March earlier on this year. It's similar to the previous album that we've just covered. It contains quite a small number of songs. It contains 8 songs, but is again quite long. It's an hour long. So all the songs are pretty lengthy. The shortest being track number 2, The Weight in the Bellows, clocking in at around the kind of 5.5 minutes. However, there's enough variation in each of the songs without them kind of overstaying their welcome or becoming overly repetitive. I think there's times where you could be forgiven for thinking that they're different songs sometimes. Breaths is a purely one-man band based out of Richmond, Virginia in the USA. It's the artist's debut album. However, it's worth noting that his second album, which is entitled Though Life Has Turned Out Nothing Like I Imagined, It's Far Better Than I Could Have Dreamt, is due to be released on the 21st of January next year and is already available for pre-order on his Bandcamp page. So according to his Bandcamp page, the artist draws inspiration from elements of post-metal, black metal, doom metal, shoegaze, progressive metal and post-hardcore. And, I think that's a pretty apt description.
Yeah.
There's a bit of everything in here. I particularly enjoyed the kind of juxtaposition between what I would have described as pretty typical, maybe post-hardcore, clean vocals and that black metal grunts and shrieks that you hear throughout the course of the album. I think neither is overdone, and I think they kind of complement each other really well. And that was a bit of a kind of standout element of the album for me. I think the instrumentation is really slick, really well conceived. I feel like kind of thundering kind of drum lines, which kind of chug along and really help drive the songs. However, we do occasionally get kind of respite from this. There's a lot of that quiet, loud moments, as you've kind of just mentioned, as well as times where the instrumentation melts away to create some space for some really introspective sounding ethereal and emotive soundscapes. As well, kind of keeping with the idea of, the kind of shoegaze element. There's plenty of kind of noodling guitar pieces, but, there's times where they really kind of pack a punch when needed. What was your thoughts, man? What did you think?
Yeah, I really like that kind of mixture of like doom and shoegaze, and of course the black metal vocals I think are like you said, they're not overdone. They don't sound cheesy.
Because that would put me off.
Yeah, they're very convincing, and I think the sort of melodic vocals are really good as well. And that kind of reminded me of when they submitted this, it said like it's recommended for fans of Deftones, The Ocean, Holy Fawn, Sleep Token, and Mountaineer. And Sleep Token being a sort of really modern, more sort of contemporary example, I think you immediately get that kind of similarity with the vocals, although I would say that I far prefer Jason's vocals here than I do. I don't know if you're familiar with Sleep Token, but I far prefer Jason's vocals than I do the warbling of the guy from Sleep Token. They're not a band I'm really that fond of, but I can see why the comparison's been brought there. But in terms of those melodic vocals, you mentioned sort of post-hardcore. I was listening to a lot of melodic hardcore and post-hardcore bands in my teenage years. Bands like Silverstein, Hawthorne Heights, maybe even a bit of Thrice, they had that kind of melodic vocals, then, leaning into sort of more heavy, screamed passages and crescendos. So certainly with the vocal side of things, the melodic vocals in that way, they sort of jump between the melodic parts and the heavier, more aggressive parts. It doesn't really remind me of those bands. It's just kind of the way. I suppose the vocals do remind me of those bands, but the songs don't.
Right.
Because you've got that. It's black metal. It's not really post-hardcore style of songs. But I think just the way that the drums and the guitars and the savage kind of black metal screams and those melodic parts and how they're all kind of constructed and sort of bounce off of each other, I think is really well done. The opening track, the title track, Lined in Silver, is really impressive. He can obviously sing, because those first few bars is just clean singing, really great clean singing.
Yeah.
It starts to get heavy. But yeah, I enjoyed this album a lot. The second track, The Weight and the Bellows, it's got this kind of creeping dread vibe as it starts off, and it's got these cool sort of scattergun drums, and it feels very epic.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of epic and engaging moments throughout the course of this album. I mean, I've kind of picked out, I'm obviously quite a fan of my bass lines and what have you. And in track number 3, Like Wires, that bass at the very end that you get treated to is I just loved it. I mean, it's really, really short-lived, but I really enjoyed it. There's some kind of scream metal baby vocals. I think it's a baby that it's his daughter, maybe. And he's just obviously taken a sample of her speaking, but put some effect on it, and it's pretty cool. I quite like that. Because you get that in the first song as well, but I mean, I think there's no effects on it, but it is a sample of, one of his children
Yeah, the end of the first track.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it was like on that third song. I didn't really notice it was like
Honestly, it's just at the very end.
Is it? That, Like Wires, is the one that reminded me the most of Deftones, just because of the vocals there sounded a lot like Chino Marino. And I'm not a fan of Chino Marino. I don't really like Deftones that much, mostly because of his vocals. But I think Like Wires is good. And there's like the black metal screams sort of swirl around in the background as well. And yeah, there's some pretty chunky riffs on that track. Well, I mean, there's chunky riffs all over the album, to be fair. I think A Year on Fire, the next track, leans even more into the kind of extreme side of things. It opens with a far more like crushing, churning riff, and the black metal vocals come in pretty much straight away. So it's like probably the heaviest opening, at least so far on the album. But it's still got those kind of haunting, like crooning shoegaze guitars in the background as well, which is really cool. And they sort of take over towards the end of it. So yeah, I like all those different elements and how they've been put together.
Yeah, is it the fifth track? In Nightmares. I loved that. That was just yeah, I thought it was epic. As you said, loads of epic kind of moments in this album. That kind of guitar riff, that combination of that kind of guitar riff and the electronics from around the 3-minute mark to about the 4-5 minute mark. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, there's like a real shimmer to the guitars on that song, and there's kind of echo to the vocals as well. It's really kind of, I mean, it opens like full on doom song, like it's just like long and drawn out and moody, and then it's got these kind of the shimmer to the guitar and the echo to the vocals, and that's a 12-minute long song as well. It's just like, normally I'm like, fucking 12 minutes, like that's far too long, but you just get kind of drawn into.
Just get swept away, don't you?
Yeah, so that's a good way of putting it, getting swept away. So I like the last 4 minutes of that song are pretty awesome. Like, there's a sort of bit where the guitars go totally clean and the vocals kind of soar, and there's like a really cool drum rhythm, and there's almost like a beatdown section near the end where the heaviness kind of comes back in. It's really good, really good. It's a journey.
Aye, that's a good way of putting it, actually.
It's a journey. Yeah, I mean, there's more sort of Deftonesy bits on the Forgotten Ones. The Inherent Emptiness, the vocals go pretty much full on Dustin Kensrue from Thrice, which is never a bad thing. And it's got like these really evil vocal screams and growls on it, and some pretty cool like synth sounds. I think could just be like modulated guitars, but they're pretty cool. And the sort of closing track, In Repose, goes full circle and is almost like a more subdued version of the opening track, Lined in Silver. And by the time that song ends, it's kind of gone back to the sort of big crashing heavy part from that first song, which is a nice way to end out the song and the album.
What was your feeling? What did you rate it?
So I have given it an 8 out of 10. I think there's a lot of good stuff. It's really melodic, it's crushingly heavy, and it's long-winded it's 60 minutes long, but it's really accessible because it's really well produced and really well put together, I think.
I was the same, mate. I give it an 8 out of 10.
And it's the same as I said about the previous album, that loud, quiet, heavy as fuck kind of dynamic, I think, is really good and done to great effect. Cool. Okay, so that was Lined in Silver by Breaths. Right, what are we on to next?
Muddy by Golden Orb.
Muddy, do you want to do this or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. So Muddy by Golden Orb, that was released on the 15th of June, earlier on this year. It contains 8 songs and is just under an hour in length, at 51 minutes and 7 seconds long. This is the band / artist's second album, I believe. They had a demo released back in 2015, which was followed by a full-length album entitled Hopeland in 2020, which according to their Bandcamp page was recorded under the generous influence of alcohol, marijuana, LSD, MDMA, Xanax, Rivotril, and other shit. And I think it's pretty fair to say that they probably used much and such the same methods when coming up with this album. As far as I'm aware, the band is comprised of like kind of 5 members, so i.e. Go Goblin on guitars and programming, Alex Muddy Johansson on guitar and guitar effects, 5CO on vocals, Dakata on drums, and Vixa on bass. So I'm not too sure if the lineup remains the same. That was the lineup when they recorded Hopeland. I couldn't find out really all that much information about them online. They are from Sofia in Bulgaria, and I think they possibly sing in a combination of Bulgarian and English.
There's definitely some English there, yeah.
I think there is.
I mean, I've got the submission again because they gave us a fairly detailed, so I'll read that out. And I mean, it goes over some of what you've said before, but I'll just read it out anyway, so it kind of explains the lineup and whatnot. So they've said Muddy is a psychedelic / experimental band from Sofia, Bulgaria. Muddy was founded in 2013 by Georgy Paranov, guitar, synth, vocals, and Mitko Nikolov, drums and synth in Sofia, Bulgaria. In 2013, the band was joined by Alexander Velchev on guitar, Viktor Sotirov, Vixata on bass, and Petko Slavikov on vocals. In this lineup, the band released a demo in 2015 entitled Revo Thriller. In 2015, Mitko Nikolov was replaced by Dejan Dragiev, Daka on drums, and saxophonist Peter Momchev joined the band. In 2016, the band began recording their first full-length album entitled Hopeland, and on March 13th, 2020, the album Hopeland is released. Due to the pandemic situation, the band decided to record a second album, and on April 9th, 2020, recording on the new album called Golden Orb began. The upcoming album is collected in 8 chapters and is an audiobook, a trip, a soundtrack. Mitko Nikolov returns to synths in several chapters, and Anna Bo joins the band as a second vocalist. And then they mentioned the first single, Golden Slave, came out on the 6th of January 2021. And the album itself came out on the 29th of May 2021. Oh no, it didn't. It said it was due for release then, but I don't think it actually came out until June. Is that right?
Yeah, 15th of June.
On Black Dolphin Records. So anyway, that was quite a complicated... if you wanted to know about the lineup, Grant, then well, there you go.
Yeah. And it's a pretty complicated album. There's a lot in there. I mean, when I first started listening to it, I was just like, this is going to be a metal album. And although there's elements of metal in there, yeah, it's a trip. It really is a trip. The opening track, Golden Bashuka, that sounded alright. Yeah, go with that. Yeah, like I said, I thought it was going to be a purely metal album. Opens with this kind of muted grunting electrical guitar, which briefly gives way to some ethereal string section before the guitars crashing again. The vocals, they sound pretty metal, or at least they are at first, but at the same time quite alternative and avant-garde. I found that kind of vocal refrain of what I believe he's singing is, "This is my track for today."
Is that what he says?
I think so. This is my track for today. That was impossible not to sing along to. I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. There's quite a lot of kind of twists and turns to the song, as is the case with most of the album. They mix with the genre and the pace of the song, kind of messing with kind of time signatures and what have you. And that's a mainstay of the album as a whole. I did feel as if in the opening track it felt quite clumsy. At times, but I certainly think that got better as the album kind of transpired. there's a lot of kind of progressive experimental stuff thrown in there. It bleeds into the kind of second track, the Golden Bashuka, which again is a mostly instrumental number. It's got an almost kind of jazzy feel to it, with this kind of swooning saxophone, which I thought was going to be right up your street, Snedds, and it's something that I found a delight to listen to. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, and it kind of works itself up into this really dense, pulsating crescendo with, I think, what is kind of maybe female vocals somewhere off in the kind of distance. It has this really kind of intense drum beat before we get a return to some more of that kind of metal-esque guitar riffs in the previous number. I don't know if it's worth saying, but each of the tracks are prefixed with golden something or other.
Yeah, so every track is golden something.
Golden something, yeah.
So Golden Bashuka, or how you pronounce that?
The second track.
Yeah, the second track, like halfway through that, it felt like I was being abducted by aliens. It just felt like, there's like these sweeping electronic noises. It just feels like a sort of shadow is appearing overhead and like ready to suck you up into the void or whatever. Had that sort of atmosphere. And then it had like a hardcore riff, almost like something you'd expect from Turnstile, but just a bit, dirtier. Like, not quite as sort of fun as Turnstile, but that's what it reminded me of. Just a bit more crusty. And that saxophone, the sort of faded saxophone, it sort of starts off far away and then slowly comes into focus, which is pretty cool. And to go back to the first track for a moment, I think that track at least, it's a proggy kind of experimental album, but this feels more like grunge, like alt rock, kind of stoner rock. Certainly that first track, than when you compare it to something like TDK, which was far more metal. This is it feels more grungy and, stoner. Certainly that first track, his vocals reminded me quite a lot of Monster Magnet. They're sort of groovy stoner rock band. And sort of creepy, he just sounds like a creepy weirdo.
Well, have you seen photos? Well, I don't know if this guy is the lead singer, but I mean, if you look at the album art, it's a guy blacked up, not in kind of black and white minstrel way, but I mean he's covered in black body paint, and I think that's how he maybe performs live. I don't know. I think, is it on the album of Hopeland? It's the same guy, but he's wearing like a top hat, and it's just, you can't really see his face, you can't really see his features because he's looking down at his guitar. It's just like a photo of him playing his guitar from about his chest up.
Yeah.
And it looked like the Babadook had released an album.
Like, I wasn't sure if on the album art for this at least it was like gold paint and it was just like dark lighting. I don't know because
I don't think so.
But maybe not.
I don't think so. I think it's worth mentioning as well. Like there's a reoccurring theme, and I don't know almost how to put it in words. It's almost like a horror movie trope in a way. That noise that you just hear constantly scattered throughout the course of the album, it's quite unnerving. I think you probably hear in the opening bars of the first song, the Golden Bashuka, and it's just littered throughout the course of the album, and it kind of catches you off guard. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's obviously a theme.
There's lots of weird noises.
Oh, there is a lot of weird stuff.
I mean, the third track, Golden Slave, there's lots of bleeping, it's almost like whale song on there. And it sounds like a 70s B movie, at the start anyway. That's how it felt for me.
I was making soup whilst I was listening to this. And I felt as if I was in the opening credits of Seven, making my soup, making a lovely butternut squash soup. But I felt like a fucking horror movie villain, making some sort of potion or whatever.
Boiling somebody's head in the soup pot.
Yeah, that's quite an unnerving track.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery and unknown to be found in that song, I'd say.
In the album. As well.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've used the word weird a lot in every description of these songs, but There's the actual sounds of a rainstorm on one of the tracks.
Yeah, that's the Golden Shaduni.
Yeah, there's like old man vocals that sound like they're played in reverse. That's the same song. There's like a classic guitar sound in there.
Somebody playing a flute maniacally off in the distance.
Yeah, it's quite tribal. There's good female vocals on Golden Postulate as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that, the words are sort of delivered really slowly and deliberately in this kind of sultry, cool as you like sort of fashion. I guess a little bit like in the way that the singer in Dry Cleaning delivers her vocals.
Yeah, they are a wee bit, yeah.
I just kind of put that together just now, but that kind of really sort of sultry, kind of cool way of delivering vocals. It's got like, some smoky saxophone again, and this really sort of lounge lizard style keyboards as well, yeah.
Certainly, towards the end, I kind of felt, there was a bit of that kind of jazz, sax, synth kind of playing kind of sparse octaves and what have you. At the start of the song, I kind of described it as almost having this kind of sludgy, industrial kind of rock feel to it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
There's, one of the tracks, Golden Smile's got it's quite thrashy. It's got a bit of, the vocals go a bit new metal as well, and there's almost sort of discordant alt rock chords and guitar licks in there, which are sort of that sort of noisy, kind of awkward fashion of alt rock. And yeah, it's got a sort of a new metal groove in it.
The female vocals on repeat towards the end of that track were a delight to listen to. I loved that.
Yeah. There's sort of bits of stuff that sounds a little bit like Led Zeppelin in places on some of the tracks. There's some apocalyptic sounding 80s synths.
Mm-hmm.
A bit like a John Carpenter score.
Yeah. Like a real sci-fi kind of feel to it, yeah.
Yeah. There's a really short-lived sort of Dire Straits guitar lick as well on the end of A Golden Shadow as well. It's sort of Dire Straits from Beyond the Grave. Kind of it's sort of quite ghostly, but it's definitely sort of Dire Straits. It's a song I'm thinking of. Sultans of Swing or something like that.
We are the Sultans.
It's not the first thing that pops into your mind when you listen to this album. Certainly not the Sultans of Swing. But there's definitely a Sultans of Swing-esque guitar line in that song, Golden Shadow. It's just a really interesting listen, this.
Yeah, the last song isn't really a song. The Golden Amazov.
Yes.
I'd love to know what the guy's talking about. He's speaking in Bulgarian and he's going it sounds like he's obviously talking about something, describing something, and he's like, a-chuk, 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 and you're like, what are you talking about, man? I'd love to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's kind of he said in the submission email that it was in 8 chapters, it's an audiobook, a trip, a soundtrack. So maybe that's the sort of audiobook kind of
side of it, yeah.
Side of it, perhaps. So there's, there is some kind of bizarre story weaved through, maybe a narrative through all these songs that I've absolutely no idea what
No, neither
is.
did I, but I think I find that whole that kind of noise. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That
from horror movie trailers or whatever.
It reminds me of War of the Worlds, like that.
Yeah, okay.
And you're just it does kind of catch you quite off guard.
I guess that's maybe where I got the kind of abduction kind of thing from.
Yeah.
From that second track, I think it was. So it just felt like there was some kind of giant spacecraft coming overhead. Because
it does feel as if it's kind of pulsating, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where I got that from. But yes, very.
It's a wild album.
It's so strange because there's so much going on, and there's some really catchy grooves and stuff on it. You can really sort of nod your head along to, and then there's just bits that just kind of are confusing and just completely kind of blow your mind. I just said there's moments of insane genius on here, I'd say.
Yeah. I'd be inclined to agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, well, how have you rated this? I'll let you go.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I've been over generous with the marking here. Now that we've had kind of time to discuss it, I've written a 7 out of 10, but I've acknowledged that I don't know how likely it is for me to go back and listen to the album. Yeah, I'm torn. It's an odd one. It's an odd one. I can't picture myself ever being in the mood to sit down and listen to Golden Orb. But then I don't know. Like, again, it's a wee bit like when we kind of talked about Squid's Bright Green Fields. You know what I mean? Like, do you ever just be like, nah, I'll sit down and listen to that? It's almost like, horses for horses. When I'm kind of talking about prog rock bands that I listen to, it's often something that I have on in the background when I'm going about my kind of daily business. And I imagine this is maybe the type of album for that type of thing. It's one you could probably kind of ebb in and out of, zone in and out of, rather.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. Has that been harsh? I don't think so.
No, I mean, I think you can. I think you can listen to this. You can listen to it passively, but I think you can also sit and give it your attention and pick out like all these, like we've done, pick out all these weird things and little bits and pieces you might not notice if you're just listening to it passively. But I don't know if I would necessarily pick out a song. Be like, oh, I'll go and listen to, so. I'll go and listen to Golden Shadow or whatever. Like, maybe I would, but I think it's one of these kind of listen to it as an album.
Yeah.
While you're making some kind of witch's brew or something. I don't know.
Making some soup.
Boiled heed soup. But I've been more generous. I've given it an 8 because I think just this sort of sheer like insanity of it and like that, so that kind of brass balls making something like this and it actually being enjoyable to listen to and not just a complete like terrible, horrible mess. Like, I think
it's far from that. It's far from that. Yeah, it's experimental, it's wild, there's a lot of different things at work here, but it does kind of shamble along and does work quite well together.
I think because it's so odd, the fact that there's so many odd things, like, because it's odd, the fact that it is so odd works. Does that make sense? I don't know if that does make sense.
It does. It's hard to put into words, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose this is the definition of a must-listen album, because you cannot, if you don't listen to it, you're not going to understand what it's like.
No, like, I don't think so.
We can't really describe it. You have to sit down and listen to this. I mean, a lot of people just shut it off after like 2 minutes or something, but I think give it a chance. You might be pleasantly surprised, or you might be appalled. It's definitely worth a listen.
Yeah. What was Kat's reaction to it? Because I know you had it on playing in the flat quite a
bit. No, she's not really heard it. I think she heard a couple of tracks in the car, and I think she wanted it turned off. I think similarly with TDK, I think she kind of had it on a little bit in the car. She put up with it for a little while, and then it's like, yeah. But when it got to one of those intensely heavy bits, she's like, can we put something else on? So yeah, it's definitely not for everyone.
No. Lost for words.
Yeah. Okay, so that was Golden Orb by Muddy. Oh.
This is my track for today.
Okay, next one is Karma from Equal Frequencies, who are a band from Huddersfield in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
The album is 11 tracks and, again, close to an hour, 52 minutes roughly. And I'm just going to read their submission email again, because it kind of just explains who they are and what they're about. So, hi, I'm one half of Equal Frequencies. I produce the music and work on all the social media. The other half is my husband Rob, who writes the lyrics and drums on the tracks. I hope you will take a look at our latest album, Karma, and the tracks I've provided. We would love to share our music on your podcast. We are totally independent and have self-released our music for 2 years on the Armora Recordings label, which we created. We offer our own views on the current situation and occasionally ask awkward questions, but we are all about positivity and sharing our art. You can find us on Twitter at Equal Frequencies, Equal Freaks, I guess, FREQS, where we're the most active. We also have a website, equalfrequencies.net. We have released 2 other albums, My Dreams Are Your Dreams and No Divide, as well as 2 singles, Sanctuary and COVID Christmas, a slightly tongue-in-cheek view of the situation in the UK over Christmas. Thanks for your consideration, and we hope we can speak soon. Equal Frequencies, Rob and Rowena Chadwick Smith. So this one, I suppose, is pretty different from all the other things we've talked about so far.
This is probably the most palatable out of everything we've covered so far.
Yeah.
Bar the singles, this is probably the most palatable album, I would say.
Yes. So this is like an album of like chilled out ambient pop songs, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I visited their website and what was it? Their website or their social media page, maybe Facebook page, where they described themselves as an electronic dance music crossover. Yeah, the songs definitely have that sort of kind of feel to them, albeit with a kind of bit more stripped back and relaxed kind of vibe. There's no outright kind of dance bangers on this. You know, it's not PNAU or anything like that. It's not Daft Punk.
No, but most of these songs have got like a danceable like drum beat in the background.
Oh, aye.
That usually, drives everything along. Although the rest of the instrumentation is usually reasonably chilled or laid back, but there's always this kind of drum beat that either lasts for the whole song or comes in at certain moments.
Mm.
I suppose as well to start with the opening track and title track, Karma. It's like we said, this has a kind of fantastic stomping drum beat that combines with these kind of shimmering, twinkling chimes. The vocals are slightly modulated or auto-tuned, as they are throughout the album. And initially I wasn't too sure about that first. There's a little bit of an Adam Levine-esque tinge to it.
You know how you feel about Adam Levine?
Yeah, we all know. But actually I think the vocals fit the vibe really well. And
yeah,
I like a lot of the lyrics as well.
Well, this album has one of my favourite, it's obviously in one of the lyrics, it has one of my favourite sayings of all time. Let's slip the dogs of war. I love that. It's from Julius Caesar, the Shakespearean play. And I just love to use it totally ironically. I think the full saying, the full line is cry havoc and let's slip the dogs of war. I can't remember which track it's on. It's further on the album anyway.
I mean, there aren't that many opportunities to use that quote, really, are there? In daily life?
It's quite funny to use just to be overly dramatic and theatrical. Going into a team meeting, for example.
It's like, sort of morning team talk, and you like end your talk with that. So let's all have a good day, cry havoc, and let's slip the dogs of war.
Yeah. You know what the boss Jim always says? Sorry, we went totally off topic.
Yeah. So where was it? So Karma, the first track, really good. Like I said, I wasn't that keen on the vocals at first, but I got used to them and ended up actually really liking them. So I think, it's a great opening track, and it's got a really danceable drum beat throughout. And then you've got Is This How You Want It to Be? And that's got this like really melodic opening with guitar, bass and drums. And it's got this, like the guitar hook throughout that, and it just sort of repeats throughout the whole song. and it's just so good. And I really like the lyrics in this song as well, which is about lockdown and
Yeah.
Whether the people in charge really have our interests in mind and that kind of thing. It's just quite thoughtful and insightful.
I think, sorry to interrupt there, Snedds, but I kind of felt as if, like, it kind of epitomised what everybody was thinking, or maybe is still thinking, particularly with, lyrics like contradictions by the score, nothing makes sense anymore. I mean, that's something that I say on a daily basis, working within the NHS, for example. Like, there's so many contradictions, we don't know which way's up or down anymore, because it's changing constantly.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you said in the description about the album and the email that they sent, they do touch on current topics, and they kind of posit that they ask some kind of controversial questions at times within their music. But I think it's worth saying that they're not overly forceful with it. It doesn't feel dogmatic. It's by no means, it's not preachy, I suppose, is the point that I'm trying to get at.
They're not forcing any opinions down your throat.
They're absolutely not, no.
That can always be off-putting when you're kind of having an opinion forced upon you, but they certainly don't do that. It's just kind of food for thought, really, isn't it?
Yeah, aye, absolutely.
I don't think the whole album is not, like, every track isn't as strong as some of the other tracks in the album. I think the first couple of tracks there are great. I think Afterlife, the fourth track, is really great as well, which for some reason, it's got this kind of really epic kind of instrumental that opens it. It's like a synthesized orchestra. It's really nostalgic for me because it reminds me of the theme music for Unreal Tournament on the PC, like the original Unreal Tournament from like the year 2000. It's just something about it that reminds me of that theme tune. So yeah, I really like that track. It's got a really good drum beat that kicks in, which changes the mood slightly, and it's got a really, really great vocal melody as well. And again, the lyrics are strong. I like the sentiment of the lyrics. So it goes, then speak not of death, no, not my last breath. It just means the passing of a day, where dreams will dream as if they were a play. So I strut and fret no more. Death is just an open door. I think, there's a lot of great lines like that.
Yeah.
Just really clever lyrics. And yeah, there's a few songs that I think are really great, and then there are a few songs that aren't quite as strong, but overall I think it's pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really kind of bright, breezy, kind of shiny album to listen to. I think they were able to create some really interesting, kind of delicate melodies at times, particularly on Lost, for example. Yeah. That was a standout track for me. That was track number 6. That's the one that has my favourite line in it.
Nice.
It's really quite laid back and quite soothing. And I imagine being a sax man like yourself, man, the sax squatch. You are the sax squatch.
The saxophone's a weird instrument because I used to hate it, like, because it always reminded me of like pop love songs. But in more recent years, I've been exposed to another side of that instrument where it's just this kind of psychotic beast of an instrument. But it's a little poppier in this, but it's still really good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. Like Lost and what's the other one?
Lost Kids of Today. There's a bit of it in there as well.
Yeah, Lost Kids of the Day is the best bit of saxophone, I would say.
Yeah, there was times where it kind of reminded me a bit of the Lasso Trimagi album that we covered last time.
Yeah, there's definitely moments to that. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
This feels a bit more like 90s, like back in the 90s when like dance music was like mainstream pop, like that was the sort of stuff you had on the radio, like Moby and Fatboy Slim and that kind of stuff. Like It feels certainly like something like In the Spirit. It sounds like, it's got this sort of synth to it that's you could be straight out of a Moby track, and it's got a kind of almost clubland sounding sort of drum and bass to it as well. So that it's got, there is a sort of 90s vibe to quite a lot of it as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, I get your point about Trimagi. I don't think this is as... I didn't find this quite as exciting as Trimagi, but this is different. It is very different.
It's very different.
There are similarities, but they are still very different. What are your favourite tracks?
Lost Kids of Today. I really quite enjoyed the penultimate track as well, Fate. At times, with regards to, for example, the second track in Lost Kids of Today, the lyrical content, at times, they're touching on some pretty difficult concepts, like the COVID, unemployment, lack of opportunities, particularly in kind of Lost Kids of Today. However, I felt that like Fate, with it being the kind of penultimate track, just it's not the last track, it's the second last track, but I felt as if it was nice. You know what I mean? I found it quite an uplifting song, quite life affirming at times. Yeah, those were my standout tracks. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I think the closing track, Land of My Dreams, is one of my favourites. I just like, there's a good thump to the bass. There's a nice like moody kind of sparse piano. There's a good drum stomp. It's got, electronics and synths on it, and they all just kind of combine really well together. And then the vocals are really lush. And the lyrics are just nice, like Land of My Dreams, so real to me, let them forever be. Hear the music in the trees, created by a gentle breeze. It's just they're just nice.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's just a nice, soothing song to listen to.
What did you rate it?
So, like I said, I think there's, how many tracks are on this album again? 11. So, I think there's 4 or 5 like really strong tracks, and then a few that aren't quite as good. But overall, I really like it. So I've gone for a 7 for this one.
That's exactly what I've put as well. I think it's fair to say that there's a dip in quality here and there. I mean, I think you're right to say that the album as a whole, starts off really strong with the first 2 tracks. Third song, is it Dystopia? I kind of felt as if, I don't know, it felt like a soundtrack to something. It felt like almost like, I don't know why, I've got the Pirates of the Caribbean in my mind. I don't know why, because it obviously doesn't, but yeah, it kind of felt, I don't want to use the word gimmicky. I don't know what it was. It wasn't one of the better tracks for me.
Yeah, I think that was a slight dip after those first 2 tracks, because they are really strong, and I think it comes back well with Afterlife, and then there are those sort of dips here and there, but yeah, I think it's still a good album.
Definitely.
I haven't listened to their other albums, but I did listen to COVID Christmas, and so that's going to go into the festive cheer Christmas playlist that we do, because it's basically about, lockdown Christmas and sort of all the rules we have to follow to make Christmas successful. And some of the lyrics are, I think this is early on the song, is, what if Christmas goes ahead? Will most of us end up dead? And then it lists reasons that if we follow, lists the rules we have to follow to stop that from happening, one of which is kissing under mistletoe has to go away, and no love, no hugs. So, yeah, it's that's the kind of Christmas song that I like. sort of miserable Christmas songs.
A doer Christmas song.
I just get fed up of hearing the same Christmas songs every year, and I like to.
Like what, the same 10 Christmas songs since like...
in every supermarket, every coffee shop, I just like, I like things that kind of turn Christmas on its head a bit. So that one's going straight in there, and so that'll be in there. Be listening to that at Christmas time. Cool, okay, so that was Karma by Equal Frequencies. Right.
You have had your way. No answers yet. They are making trillions you can bear. Then speak not of death. No, not my last breath. It just means the passing of a day. Paradise is so lost. Humanity cannot be found.
This holiday season, fill your hearts with festive cheer, the brand new alternative Christmas playlist from the Head Scratcher, featuring all the greatest Christmas songs ever recorded. Slay what? Yes, that's right. For the first time ever, all your favorite Christmas hits are available together in one handy compilation playlist. Save yourself from a silent night and sing along with such classics as Sad Christmas Clown, Christmas with the Devil, Backdoor Santa,
They call me Backdoor Santa. I make my runs about the break of day.
Santa Claus Goes Straight to the Ghetto,
Now on the first day of Christmas, my homeboy gave to me a sack of that crazy glue and told me to smoke it up.
We're All Going to Die,
You're gonna die, you're gonna die, alone. You're gonna die, you're gonna die, you're gonna die alone.
and many, many more. It's the perfect playlist for office parties, family gatherings, or just singing away to your elf. Listen to Festive Cheer, the Head Scratcher's alternative Christmas playlist this year. It's fun for all the family. Miss out and you'll be sorry.
Not suitable for children or those with a nervous disposition.
Right, on to the last
Right.
one now, which is You'll Own Nothing and You'll Be Happy, the EP from Sugar Pan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do this one?
Yeah, man. So, it was released on the 8th of July, earlier on this year. Contains 6 songs and approximately 21 minutes and 53 seconds long. The band themselves are from Spain. They describe themselves variously on their social media page as Psychedelic Alchemists. Pronounced that properly this time. Who create a melting pot of krautrock, psychedelia, acid folk, and ambient post-rock. So, according to their Bandcamp website, they were founded by Alessandro Durante, aka the Spy. Oh no. Psychedelic, and Iker Garmendia, aka the Psychonauta. It's the band's second EP, from what I can gather, and follows the release of their first EP entitled The Five Elementi EP, which was released on the 20th of September. I think that was... I've got 2021, but that's obviously wrong. It must have been 2020. Probably worth mentioning the EP's title, i.e. You'll Own Nothing and Be Happy. I'd heard that before. I don't know if you'd heard it before.
I don't know if I have.
Yeah, so I don't know for a fact, but if you search that phrase, You'll Own Nothing, Be Happy, it may have been taken from this online video that was kind of doing its rounds earlier on in the year, which purportedly spread misinformation about the World Economic Forum's plans to disenfranchise us from owning private property and basically ushering in a new feudalistic age by 2030. This has largely been debunked, I believe. There's articles there. I've got an article there that I could send over to you, Snedds, for the notes. But yeah, who knows what to believe. But I think it's probably connected, given that the first track in the album is called Business as Usual. But then again, that's maybe me just kind of reading too much into it. But as for that track, in terms of the music itself, I found that track immediately captivating and engaging. It had this kind of real post-punk electronic vibe to it, which, I really dug. It kind of opens with this really scratchy, clunking guitar sound, overlaid with what sounds like kind of Morse code and incoherent voice clips, which sounded kind of Chinese, maybe?
Yeah, maybe Mandarin, something like that.
Very reminiscent, for my money, of something that, public service broadcasting might have done. Don't know what you thought of it, man.
I like the use of Morse code as like a melodic hook.
Yeah,
I
aye.
think it's quite clever. But yeah, and then just adding sort of psychedelic guitar squeals and bleepy electronics over the top of it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And going back to the name of the EP for a second, I think it's interesting because we're living in a world of digital media.
Yeah.
You could link it with that because, you know, you've got all these music streaming services. Okay, people still buy physical music, but everything's kind of moving more towards companies that provide a service and then you sort of rent media from them. Like, you know, your Netflixes and your Spotify's and
Amazon Prime,
like everything. And like even, you know, video games now, like you've got services being provided by PlayStation and Microsoft, you know, that you stream games or you download them digitally. You don't necessarily buy physical copies of games as much anymore, and it's all moving away from that.
We pay for a game that we play on stream, me and a couple of mutual friends. We pay for a server. You know, I can't remember how much it is. It's not a lot of money, but effectively paying for nothing. You know, there's nothing tangible to it.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, I think it's an interesting title. You know, however way you look at it, whether it's a conspiracy theory or not, it is kind of the sort of age we're living in and what society is moving more and more towards. But certainly, yeah, that opening track's really interesting. Madrugada, the second track, is sort of like a bit like a 70s porno. It's got like sort of those wah-wah guitars, like palm-muted wah-wah guitars. There's like a sensual flute sound in there. And it's got like tribal chanting in. It feels a bit like a drug trip as well, like on like ayahuasca or something, like some kind of powerful, like if you're out in the desert with a tribe taking some kind of powerful hallucinogen.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's definitely got that kind of ambient psychedelic feel to it. And you're right. I mean, I kind of in my notes I've pointed out like kind of ethereal noodling guitar, but then there's the what I've described them as pan pipes, bongo drums, possibly a Cajun getting played. But yeah, you're right. It does have that kind of 70s feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an experimental EP for sure. The next track, Solstice Mantra Part 1, that's really mysterious. Mysterial? It's not a word. Mysterious and sort of astral. You know, it sounds... Again, it feels like you're sort of out in the desert, but it's like the sort of night skies lit up with stars, and it's that kind of soundscape it builds up for me.
Aye, well, I kind of the same. But kind of like what you were saying about the kind of Muddy Orb album and the second track on the Muddy Orb album, the kind of Golden Bashuka. Like, I've described the third song on this album as it's got this real cinematic vibe to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's called Solstice Mantra. And, you know, I've described it here as saying, like, you could almost imagine watching the sun rise over the horizon and kind of almost like bathing in the rays of the sun. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say that because I've written it would be perfect for like a time-lapse sequence in a film or TV show. It feels like that sort of transformative from day to night kind of thing as well. So yeah, definitely agree with you on that. And the next song's got a sample from Conan the Barbarian in it.
Oh, has it?
Yeah. I mean, I actually haven't seen Conan the Barbarian, but there's that vocal sample in it. And I thought, I'll just go and search what that is. And it turns out it's James Earl Jones from Conan the Barbarian. He says something like, "The strength and power of flesh." And it's got this kind of mystical, sort of oriental feel, almost ancient sounding. So I guess that kind of ties in with the sort of fantasy element of Conan the Barbarian, I suppose. But yeah, and I mean, it's a weird song. The opening vocal sample is really creepy. And then it brings those flutes in, or panpipes or whatever, and like there's a gong, there's a crashing gong sound, there's bongo drums, there's an acoustic guitar, there's sort of rasping guitars. Yeah, that's a very interesting track, and it's called House of the Wizard as well. House of the Wizard.
Yeah, see that in and of itself, you know, put me in mind of, you know, the Doors, you know, because Jim Morrison called himself the Lizard King. can't remember the name of the song, but it's like, it will come to me eventually, probably long after we finish recording, but it ends with like, I'm the Lizard King, and I can do anything, and then there's just this weird sounds, crashing cymbals and stuff like that afterwards. So that just the House of the Lizard, just the title, put me in mind of The Doors, and I think you're right, it kind of felt quite dark and brooding. Track thereafter, Dolores Are My Pains, had this kind of chug, a kind of vibrating, pulsating kind of electronics that almost sounded like a steam engine kind of swelling underneath this almost kind of flamenco classical guitar accompaniment.
Yeah.
Which was quite strange as well.
It doesn't really change anything up though, like that song. It's sort of the same thing for the whole song.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's very ponderous and sort of meditative. But I feel that one goes on a little bit too long without really doing much different for the length of it. But yeah, I think it has got some cool bits in it. And it's quite like uncomfortable at times as well. And then we may as well just talk about the last track as well then, which is Solstice Mantra Part 2. And that kind of brings back those sort of mysterious desert vibes from the first part, but it's got like a sort of slow build of like clying guitars in the background, and it's more ominous, and there's just kind of this general background feeling of dread. Or there's like a sort of peaceful isolation in the background. There's a sort of this feeling, ominous feeling of dread. And I think the album was sort of partially inspired by the pandemic and the lockdown, and I feel like that is almost, you can imagine that is like lockdown being this kind of peaceful isolation, but with these really dark and ominous undertones as it goes on.
It's quite interesting you say that, because you kind of forget as time goes on, how lockdown affected us and some of the things that happened and occurred over the last kind of 2 years. And Kerry has just came back from Barcelona. She was over there with one of her pals, and she was telling me how strict Spain was while she was over there. Like, she took her mask down over her nose to scratch her nose or something like that, and a policeman actually told her off, told her to put it back up. And I remember when COVID first hit, there was all these videos coming out of Tenerife and Malaga and all these places where it was almost like martial law had been called. They were properly locked down. It wasn't like what we had here, really. They weren't allowed to leave the house. There was police patrolling the streets. So imagine it'd be a pretty scary time.
Yeah. There's a sort of duality though, because there's that element of it, that sort of police state kind of element of it. But at the same time, there was a sort of fun, playful side to it. It's certainly at the start when people were doing all these stupid videos, doing cover songs of songs about diseases and just having lots of fun and doing stupid games and things. And there was all of this kind of, it was almost like a feeling of positivity in the beginning. We'll do this and it'll, everything will be fine. But at the same time, there was a lot of dark shit going on. And I feel that song, it has both of those feelings at the same time.
It's interesting as well, back to what you were kind of saying about the song title. It ends with this computerized voice repeating, "You'll own nothing and be happy," and then that starts kind of glitching and getting stuck and what have you. And possibly that does tie in with what you were kind of talking about earlier on. I don't know. Yeah,
you could look really deeply into that, I think, and try and come up with all sorts of things.
I think you're right in saying, though, that, it is quite a meditative EP, quite ponderous. I think in many ways it kind of goes back to what you were saying about Trimagi album again, where you can listen to it and it conjures up all this imagery and you could really lose yourself in this.
Yeah. Again, I don't think this does as much as the Trimagi album did, in that it doesn't change things up quite as much over the length of some of the songs. I think some of the songs, they kind of stick to one thing and kind of do that over and over. Certainly, Dolores Armour Pains is the example that I used before.
And I suppose you could say, obviously, the Solstice Mantra.
Yeah.
Both those songs don't really change all that much.
But I guess it's just building a mood and a vibe. And yeah, probably this one is definitely a more passive kind of background experience. But I think it's a weird mood. It's like an interesting balance between like meditation and tension.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite interesting. How did you rate this one?
Yeah, again, about 7.
Yeah, I've gone the same for that. And just for those reasons I mentioned there, that I think sometimes it doesn't do enough for me to change things up really on some of those songs. But I think there's a lot of cool ideas and interesting kind of soundscapes that it creates. You know, the album name is a good talking point as well. And
absolutely.
Some of the stuff on here is interesting to talk about. So yeah. Okay, so that was You'll Own Nothing and You'll Be Happy by Sugar Pan, which is spelled with 2 A's, by the way.
朝鲜劳动党中央委员会8九号电回发9号电。Alright, that's them all. We've blown through those. So, I mean, I think it's worth just saying another big thank you to all the bands who, you know, have submitted us music just for this episode and, you know, for all the episodes we've done in the past. And I think it's always exciting to get an album into like the inbox and then be like, oh cool, I wonder what this sounds like. So yeah, I think that's a big, it's, you know, it's all well and good like seeking out stuff to talk about, but sometimes when somebody just sends you something that you would never otherwise have found, it's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's a big compliment, I think, to us as well. You know, for people to reach out to us and gift us with these albums.
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. Sometimes we get like, you know, free download codes and whatnot to download these things, and then, you know, yeah, they're just, it's a compliment, yeah, definitely, to get some of this stuff for free, especially when a lot of it is of a really high standard as well.
Oh, aye.
Okay, well, I think that's us. I'll just do my usual pre-prepare. I can't even talk. My usual oh god, this is a tongue twister. My pre-prepared statement. Prepare.
It's like Porky Pig.
Porky Pig, exactly. Should I just say, that's all, folks? We'll end it.
It's quite a good impression, by the way.
Yeah. Comes easily.
I do them all. I'm here all week.
I do a good Daffy Duck as well. I don't really. Right, okay. Well, there you go. That's another episode of the Scratchcast. As always, we'd love to know your thoughts on what we've covered. And if you do like any of the bands or artists covered, then make sure you send some love their way. If you want to support the show, then make sure you subscribe to the Scratchcast wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave us a nice review. This helps spread the good word. If you want to really earn your place in Valhalla, then you can buy Grant and myself a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. While you're there, you can also leave us a message and let us know how you think we're doing and what we can improve upon and what you think we should cover in the future. The link for that is in the episode description. Again, if you'd like to be featured on Submission Corner, send us your submissions at theheadscratcher@outlook.com or message us directly on Facebook and Instagram at theheadscratcher or on Twitter at scratcherhead. Don't forget, you can head over to theheadscratcher.com to find pop culture reviews, recommendations, alternative music playlists, interviews, and of course all the previous episodes of the podcast. September and October's alternative music playlist is out now. November's will probably be out as well by the time this goes up. Some of the choice cuts from that playlist are Elevation by Waco, Planet Shit by Every Time I Die, Nested by Matthew E. White, Phase by Beach Riot, My Knee Against Kyriarchy by BSI, and Escape by Destroy Boys. Finally, if you've made it this far, all that's left to say is thanks for listening, and as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye!
Bye-bye!
We done finished. It's finished.